on Voices to Be Heard. Those of you, we welcome you on iHeart and iTunes and Apple Podcasts and all Facebook and YouTube Live. You're also on Periscope, which is Twitter, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing. But let you know that you can contact us here on Voices to Be Heard. I am Dr. Paul, and the other host is Tamera Randolph. We are going to first, because of the situation, because of what this is, and it's about abuse, we're actually going to pray ourselves in, because prayer is important. And it's not because we are looking for salvation. We know that we are in God's hands, and to know that you're not alone. So it's important. So let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together, and let's hope that people who hear our voices feel like they're not alone, and let them voices to be heard, because there are many voices that are being stamped out and pushed out and bullied out because they are afraid and fearful, and they're just being abused. Let us all welcome all who shall hear us, and in Jesus Christ we pray, amen. Thank you.
Amen. Amen.
What do you think of that beginning? Was that too heavy? It's a heavy topic. So
no, I think it's a good intro just to set like our minds and our spirits for what's going to be received on tonight. So I think it's fine.
Okay, because I've been told sometimes, Dr. Paul, you're kind of heavy. You're kind of you're too much. You're always in your feelings.
Hey, I think there's nothing wrong with that, and people wouldn't love you if you changed. So I think you stay true to who you are.
Thank you.
Welcome the conversation, but I wouldn't change it.
Well, good, and I'm glad, and I wouldn't want you to change. I really want you to take the reins and say, let's talk about why we pick Voices to Be Heard. Because it's a thing, and we need to let people know that they can be heard. So let's start out with Kep and why you started Kep, and she's Kep actually, and go from there.
Anyway, so again, I'm Tamera Randolph. I was born and raised in Baltimore, raised by my mom and my supportive immediate family. Unfortunately, my mother fell victim to domestic violence, and her husband stabbed her to death. And unfortunately, I witnessed that. I was 10 years old, kind of walked into a room, and her husband was just on top of her, stabbing her. And I normally tell the story a little less graphic than that, but I was speaking to kind of my therapist. She told me to just acknowledge the truth, and that's what it was. So my mother didn't pass; no, she was killed. And this kind of goes into our topic and our voice that we're talking about this evening. So I started Kep in memory of my mother, because I wanted Kep to be a safe haven and a place where women who are going through, and their families are going through domestic violence, they can come and get the resources and support they need to get out of those toxic situations. So KEP stands for Keeping Every Possibility Tangible, and I'm going to our third full year of functioning, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I've had both men and women just share their stories, and oftentimes we look at domestic violence for women and how the women have been affected, how the men have abused the women, but domestic violence can hit and affect families, men as well. Specifically children is who I think we kind of miss a number of times when we're talking about domestic violence, because for me as a child, I witnessed the abuse and didn't really acknowledge or address that I was affected until I was much older. And just a quick story, yesterday actually, I was going to move some things into a storage unit, and I was talking to the gentleman about some of the items that I would be storing there, and I start mentioning Captain, the organization, right, and why I started it, and he just started talking about how his dad abused his mother and how he hadn't really talked about it, but, you know, for whatever reason, he felt comfortable talking about it with me. And this is all in an exchange over a counter with my mask on, you know, but that's how important this is. That's how important this moment, what we're doing is, because we are grown and adults who are still harboring all of these issues and situations and just things we've gone through, and we're just not letting them out. We're not talking about it, and we're not, I feel like we are not allowing ourselves to be our full selves. There are things that we just need to work through in these situations that we are applying and projecting onto people who don't deserve that. And it's our goal and should be our responsibility to work on ourselves. So for me, that's again why I want it kept, and I think why we are connected here is because we want to make sure that we are not only addressing things that have affected us personally, but we're giving the platform for those who are now saying, yeah, it's my time to also share, and it's my time to get these things off my chest.
So my mother, she's passed. And my mother was my idol. It's you know, I think when some men say their mother was a lot for them or to them, she was for me. And she had been married 3 times.
Okay.
The first husband, who, and this has nothing to do with the lies they had changed to. So I do have to put that. And they did change their lives. But she left him because of abuse. Because he hit her. And that was it. My mother was like, okay, nope, I'm not having it. And she left, okay? So then she married my dad. And my dad, who at the time, we're not even going to talk, because I'm not going to talk about the reasons why. And I don't, and people say, well, why? Does it matter? You know, sometimes I'm not even sure. People think the why is more important than, wait a minute, the person's still being abused. I don't care if the dog was, you know, peeing on the carpet. What does that have to do with you hitting someone, you know, in anger? They are not equate. They're not supposed to equate. We're not supposed to rationalize violence. And I think we've gotten to a place in our society that we want to rationalize violence. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I would have beat his ass. What? Like, what are you thinking? You know, like yeah, that's so she left him, my dad, because he put his hands on her. Now my stepdad abused us.
Oh, okay.
The way he used to whip us was insane, right? Not to get into the graphic details, it was just insane. So she left him because of that. My mother took violence very seriously because acts of violence is not just physical. We know that. As adults, we know that.
As adults.
Right, because we don't know. So then here's where we come into as a black woman, as a black man. We know corporate punishment in our communities is rampant. Because they're like, well, I'm going to whoop that kid's ass, right? But and I don't disagree with corporate punishment, but here's the problem I have with it. Who and why you are. Are you spanking corporate punishment to instill a lesson? Because I don't believe in spanking after 5-6 years old, because I believe cognitive skills kick in. So I think there's a dilemma, and I know in many communities that corporate punishment is a thing for Before we get into it, I just want to remind people you can give us a call here, 1-888-240-8466. That's 1-888-240-8466. You will come in live. We will bring you on live. We'll talk to you. Have any questions or comments about abuse, domestic violence, domestic abuse, anything. We want your voices to be heard. This is not just about myself or Tamera. And we want voices to be heard and let you know you're not alone. So I just really want to put that out there and keep putting that there. If you have any questions on Facebook, you can always ask and it'll come up. If you have it on YouTube, you can always ask and I'll see it. So when we spank a child, what are we saying to the child? Are you listening because I'm stronger than you? Or are you listening because it's about love? And I'm not sure if we ever transition that understanding.
Right. Yeah, I think it has to be, I was raised with spankings, but I also feel like, of course I was a great child, so I didn't really get a ton of them, obviously. But I also feel like there was a lesson. So it was like, I'm spanking you because, and I may have, the couple of spankings I do remember, it was with a dissertation, like, you better,
right.
that. But I definitely got more of a, like, talking to rather than spanking. So that's really why I don't quite remember. And my grandmother was an educator, so she was definitely she was definitely a disciplinarian, but I feel like I had more conversations than spanking so that I could actually understand what I did wrong and then what to make sure I didn't do again. But I don't know that everyone is addressing that the same way. So I'm just like, you did something, I'm going to spank you and then, just tell you to get out my face. But, like, what did I learn?
Yeah.
What did the child learn from that? Because I imagine that the parent or whoever that disciplinarian is, they don't want to keep spanking you, but you got to teach them the lesson. So.
Well, if you, Tamera Randolph, Miss, I want you to introduce you to Katie Moran. And Katie is a dear friend of mine, and she's got a story. And I was telling her about Voices to be Heard. And Katie, well, I'll let Katie tell her story, but thank you, Katie, for coming on Voices to be Heard, our inaugural episode of Voices to be Heard, because it is about hearing voices. And please, thank you for joining us. Tell us your story.
Thank you so much for having me. So I didn't experience violence growing up. I didn't witness it, but I was in about a year-long relationship, and I was living with my significant other, and it became abusive. And on, like, the first day that it became abusive, I reached out to a friend, and she told me that, because I was rationalizing it, like you said, like, violence can, like, easily be rationalized. So I was rationalizing it, and she just told me that this was, like, an actual threat, and I needed to, like, tell people who were close to me and do something about it. So the next day, I was with my trainer, and I told her, and she came over, and we called my mom, and my mom came over, and they asked him to leave. And he had to, like, pack all of his things, and they, like, drove him to, like, his family's house, and it was really devastating.
So, Katie, you said something very important, right, Tamera? You said rationalize it. Because this is your testimony, I want to hear, I'm not going to, again, this is not about why you tried to rationalize it. I want to hear some of the words you use for rationalization.
Normal.
Okay.
Anger. Fear.
Mm.
Probably those three.
So, Katie, was that the very first time is when you told your friend, or was there different, maybe it was emotionally you felt abused, or maybe psychologically was there abuse? So that fear part, where did that kind of come in, or was that just that one time where he physically abused you?
So there was a lot of codependence.
Mm.
So I think it became like easier for that to like then turn into violence when he kind of started like using drugs.
Okay.
So I think he kind of like lost like control of himself, and even like now I think like I'm still like trying to rationalize it.
Correct. That's exactly what I was going to say. So you're picking out like, oh, because he was doing drugs, that's why I deserve to be abused, which isn't the case.
Thank you.
Now, here's and this is, thank you, Katie, so much. Now, you have your master's in what, Katie?
Social work.
Right. And so the reason why I wanted you to say that, because I think so many people say, I should know this, right? So it puts them in a corner of not knowing. Did it do that to you?
I think at first I definitely rationalized it, because you can learn about something so many times, and until you like actually experience it, it's completely different. And I think I did have the knowledge of like how it happens, and it kind of like was very textbook. So I think I like felt comfortable after that I would like be able to spot it so it wouldn't happen again. But I think it was hard to separate myself and like look at it academically.
You know, I don't know. I want to remove the words of human condition, human understanding. That's just the way humans are. I think that's just such a passive way of allowing people to be an scapegoat and not to feel pain. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Because I've been teaching rape defense for a long time, and I've been doing a lot of stuff as far as abuse and stuff like that. And in every story you hear about a woman or a person who has been raped says they could not believe this was happening. You know, they'll say, I couldn't believe this was happening. So it takes themselves out of the fight of how you want to live your life. Do you want to live this way, right? Even if it's just an attack, I can't believe I didn't see that person. So they put all that ownership on themselves of the incident.
Right.
And of course, healing is a journey. Healing takes time. You have to mourn. I believe in mourning. I believe we're not taught how to mourn. I believe that no one understands what mourning really is, because they're thinking, you should just be over it. It's been 2 weeks. You're good. Or it's been 6 years. You're good. No, I'm still healing. I'm still going through this. And, move on with your life. Get over it. You know, those words are so painful and they're so hurtful.
They are, and I can kind of attest to that, Katie. It takes a lot of guts and courage to just come and share and be vulnerable. And I'm sure it took just that. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing, because there are so many women and people in general that are just going through similar situations, and they don't have the courage to reach out to a friend for that help. And as Dr. Paul was saying, it's easy also for us or for people in those situations to blame themselves and not know or not understand that it's not our fault, for someone to mistreat us. And then it's also okay if our coping mechanisms are different than others. Like, we could be the same age, you know, have the same boyfriend with the same name, but in our stories could be very similar, but the way I cope and the way I choose to deal, or the way I deal with it, could be totally different than yours. And it's okay that I have my own unique way of getting over or getting through, but it's important that we do. And I think making the first step is acknowledging that and not allowing anyone else to control how fast or slow our grieving time or moments are. Because for me, for example, my mom passed 25 years ago. And there are still things at different points when I'm sharing that story that it just tears me up. Most times I can talk about it, I can tell my exact, depiction of what happened on the day, but there are certain things about the way I felt with my mom, or different memories that I personally kind of recall, that just stir up something else in me. And I think it's okay for us all to have our own personal journeys, and however long it takes for us to heal and get through those moments, it's ours. And don't be afraid to set that boundary, and make sure whoever's trying to invade that understands, like, this is mine, and I'm okay with going through it without you, especially if it's someone that's not encouraging or helping you through.
Yeah, it's definitely taken time. It took like about a year to not have it feel like so long.
Katie, what are some of the things you're doing in your healing process that would you like to share, if you would like to share it all?
So I write poetry. I have a poetry platform, and I connect with a lot of other poets.
You actually wrote a poetry book.
It's coming out in November.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
I wrote a short story that's fiction.
Awesome.
Yeah. So connecting with other people has been an amazing thing for me too.
You feel it's therapeutic in helping you?
Yeah, it really makes me feel like I'm not alone. And that's the whole purpose behind the poetry platform, was so that I can connect with other people, to help other people feel like they're not in it alone also.
And I'm going to welcome you to come back every week when we have Voices to be Heard, and just share your story and just share what you're doing, because we need more. You're a hero to us. You're a hero,
yes.
all of you. I there's a lot of things I don't like. I like surviving cancer, but surviving abuse, no. I don't know why I dislike surviving that, because that's not something I should have lived through. You know what I mean? Like, cancer is an illness. I'm not talking about, and it bothers me because I hear the voices. I got voices in my head going, "Well, he had an illness," and you know what? We're not talking about that. You know what I mean? And so, but so you're healing, and I'm proud, and I'm happy. Thank you. So we're gonna let you go, Katie. We'll let you go, and
have a good day.
Hi,
thank
Katie.
you.
So nice to meet you. Thank you so much for sharing. We needed that.
So for those of you who do want to share, you can always give us a call here at 1-888-240-8466. You can always comment on a comment line. So Tamera, what do you think of that? I mean, it's the whole rationalization of something that was so. It bothers me.
I think, she kind of mentioned it, so that I think the one thing that prompted her to go and get the help, Katie to go and get the help, but I'm just confident that, and I wanted her to kind of talk about it, but the emotional abuse and the psychological abuse came way before the physical abuse, and that those are additional types of abuse that we don't easily recognize and identify, but where he is trying to control her and financially trying to make her feel as if she needed to depend on him and she couldn't do much else. And then after the abuse kind of took the additional stages, it appears as though, to Katie's defense, she was allowing the fact that he was doing drugs to be the excuse. And I think she mentioned that, and then she mentioned saying or feeling like it was normal, or at least thinking, or maybe she said it aloud, that it was normal for, I guess, because he was doing drugs, for him to treat her that way. But that's just, I'm glad that she understands that shouldn't be the norm, and she doesn't have to deal with that, and she doesn't have to stay in that type of situation. And I think those are things that we, not only this platform, but whenever we're out and talking and in our personal lives and in our friendships, we should be open to hearing our friend's side of the story. And for Katie, her friend did, I feel like, exactly what needed to be done, was getting her to a person that could actually help. Because maybe the friend thought, I don't know what I can do personally, but I know someone else that can help get you out of the situation. And if nothing else, let us be that person that helps get our friend or our loved one to someone or somewhere that can help them get out of that situation.
We have the greatest conversations with people that when you open up your heart to, and that's what happened with you in the storage center, the storage unit. I was on a plane going to Minnesota, and a young man was sitting a man was sitting next to me. We were probably about the same age, in our 50s, and I was sitting on the window seat. He was sitting in the middle. And he says, "Oh, so were you heading to Minnesota?" I said, "I was going to see family." And he says, "Oh, I said, I have a daughter there. I have children there in Minnesota, in Fargo, North Dakota, and things like that." He goes, "Oh," and we were flying from New York. And I said, "Oh, so when's the last time you visit Minnesota?" He goes, "Well, my daughter lives there." I said, "Oh." And so we got to talking, and then he paused after he said his daughter. And I said, as dads, we like to see our children and to make sure they stay safe. Because I had a feeling. And his daughter was being abused by the boyfriend, and she had called mom and dad, and he got on the plane, and so he's heading to Minnesota, and his mind, he wants to take her and bring her right back, right? And I said, you be careful. Because what you want to do as mom and dad and as a father, she may fight you. Like this, I'm sorry I called you and I shouldn't have never, and you want to, because now it's such a muddy situation when people try to help you. And then if you say, well, you called for help or upset. So, what do you think about those types of situations?
Yeah, I think like you said, it is a muddy situation. I think we don't want to shame them or make them feel guilty for coming to us for help, but you also have to offer them some grace and just say, like, well, I just want to be here to help you. I love you. I don't want anything to happen to you. So I would love to take you immediately out of this situation, and maybe that's not exactly what you're ready for right now, but just let them know that you are there, at least for whatever they want to do. But I think, like you said, I think it's going to be a case-by-case situation, because there will be some friends, like, I'm coming to you right now because I'm ready to go right now. I don't want to look back. And then there are going to be some situations where they're coming to you, or maybe they didn't even know that this was going to be the sharing moment,
Right.
And it could be just a conversation, and you're picking up on said things, and you're like, something's not right, and unfortunately, we could easily be in those situations, and I just think we have to kind of use our intuition and kind of knowing who that person is to us and maybe how they move, and figuring out what would be the proper way to address them if it's in fact a separate conversation that you have. But you don't want to, I know a while ago, I'm not sure if it still comes on, but it would be like an intervention, right? So the families would kind of go behind whoever's back, like the family members back and the friends back, and because they, I think, were on drugs or something like that. And that is just, for me, that would be too aggressive. I don't know. It would take, I think the premise of it, meaning that we need to get you help right now, is definitely it. But I don't know if everyone is emotionally stable to take that kind of intervention.
So here's the thing, and you said something, and it's funny, you have to remind people that they have to be civil. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You said something. You said abusers use safe words.
Mm-hmm.
Words that a normal relationship would use in caring. But they also use it.
Yeah.
So how do you decipher that? And I'm not even going to say the words, but because it could be any words.
Yeah, it could be. So, I mean, an example is like, trying to think of a, kind of more of a PG example, but maybe something like I love you so much, or like I care about you so much, so I don't want you dressed in this type of way, or I don't want you going to this place, or going to hang out with your family because I love being with you all the time, or I just want us together. Like that type of controlling, that's a psychological, emotional type of controlling abuse. But they
sandwich it. But they sandwich with I love you.
Yeah, I love you. But I mean, we can maybe next time Katie's on, if she recalls, she's probably got similar sandwiching. Like,
right, okay.
I'm so sorry. I love you. I would never want to hurt you, and I'm sorry I did that. Like, no, thank you. Like, I don't need that kind of love. I don't need anything that feels like that, and that's emotionally, physically, psychologically. I don't want anything like that. So, like, some additional, types of abuse. So we have the physical, we have emotional, psychological, sexual, and financial abuse. So that financial one is kind of a newer one that's kind of been taken out, like this psychological, emotional abuse. But financially, and I've heard it a number of times where women feel like they are going to stay in said situation because they are being taken care of. So the man is taking care of the household, their bills, etc. And it's at a point where the woman feels intimidated to leave because they're not sure if they can financially take care of themselves. Right. And when you have children involved, it becomes even more of a burden or tear. So I feel, and I'm kind of interpreting other reasons why women may stay, but I feel like some of it, or a lot of it, specifically what I've heard, is because of the children and making sure that the children are set financially, and that's where the guy or the abuser is taking advantage of the woman. So they know that financially, okay, maybe I'm not going to strike her, but I know financially I can control exactly what she feels and where she's going to stay and remain, because I know that she can't do anything else without me. And that is abuse.
Someone had asked a question, what is the National Abuse Hotline number? And I have it for you. It is 1-800-799-7233. And
that's safe, and you can call or chat with them at that number. If you go to their website, they have a chat line, so like an instant messenger type of thing. You can call, you can chat with someone right online on the website. If you're there and you're in the house with someone, and say they're walking in the room or something like that, they have like a big, bold kind of box that'll take you to like the Weather Channel or something like that. Just in case you don't want, if you're in a area that you don't want them to see exactly what you're doing. But that's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 24 hours a day.
What have you come across women who are being stalked by ex-boyfriends and people that they dated that they just can't seem to get them out of their lives? That's a form of abuse too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stalking is a part of that's that emotional, psychological thing too. I don't personally know anyone. I've definitely heard of stories, but that is, you hear that often with women who may have been abused, and then they've gotten out of the situation, and then they'll get like a restraining order or something like that. But that restraining order is a piece of paper, that he has to get close enough for you to call the police again, and then, essentially wait for the police to get there. But I've definitely heard of, actually, I take that back. So I've heard a personal story, and she was mentioning how her ex-husband actually did stalk her. He would come to her job. He knew where she worked. Obviously, they weren't together, but he came to her job one day, and she had to go and just basically ask her boss and the security guard to like make sure her husband does not get in there, because he would like keep calling her. He called her at her desk, showed up to the job because she wasn't answering him.
Right.
Because she was leaving. So that stalking is a real thing, and it comes in different forms. So even now, like texting,
cyber,
or, cyber, So you're blocking them on different social media platforms, but then they're coming in under either a friend that you commonly share,
right,
or they're creating different profiles, emailing you, texting. So that is abuse, and that shouldn't be accepted.
And the words again being used, I love you,
Mm-hmm.
all those. So that's what's so confusing, I think, for anyone who can't believe they're in this situation. Unlike the physical direct getting hit,
Right.
How did I get in this situation? I'm smarter than that.
Right. And I think it's easy for us to get in situations and basically punish ourselves so much and not give ourselves the same amount of grace that you're giving that other person. So you keep allowing that person to do the same thing, but you can't forgive yourself for quote unquote allowing it. And it's a psychological thing and it's not just with abuse, it's with it can be just things and situations that we do in our lives. So we make a mistake and hold ourselves hostage instead of acknowledging I made the mistake, and now this is what I'm going to do to make sure I don't make that mistake again. And so we can apply that same course, meaning I'm in this situation. Okay, I chose to be with this guy. Now he's doing this to me, and I'm going to make the decision to get out of the situation. And it's okay. It happened. It wasn't my intention. It's not like I went searching. Like I didn't sign up on, one of those dating sites. Like, oh, let me see if there's an abuser on the site.
Right.
Who signs up for that? But it happened. It's not your fault, and it's okay to give yourself the grace and the forgiveness, I guess, if you want to say that's necessary. But you need to get out, and it is okay. Whenever your now is, it's okay. Choose the now. It doesn't matter how long you dealt with it. It could be 10, 20 years, but on this 20th year, 18th day,
right,
you can get out.
And
it's okay.
And I like what you said, and I like to say, so thanks everyone for listening. Remember, if you ever want to call us or email us or talk to us about the show, you can email me. Maybe I will get an email for the show, and I'll work on that. But you can email me at Dr Paul Dr Paul W Dyer @gmail.com. And what's your email, Tamera?
It's Tamera, Tamara, @shekept.org, SHEKEPT.org.
And we'll have to put that into the thing. And I don't know why I keep calling you Tamara, because
I forgive you.
So the question, we have a question real quick, and I'm going to get back to my statement. Do you think restraining orders work?
I think
my quick answer is no.
I think it can work. I think that there are different steps, that our justice system wants to see. Here's
my fisticuff issue.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you get a restraining order,
right,
I am going to fully in my heart believe you told them to stop.
Correct.
Okay. So let's go with the woman, person says, you need to stop. They don't stop. So they have taken whatever you say, they're never going to listen. That in itself is abuse.
Yeah, it's starting out with abuse, and then they're disregarding what, how you feel. If
right.
You feel unsafe. So I guess bottom line, to your point, no, it's not going to immediately work, because if you've already told them that, you saying I'm going to get a restraining order or getting a restraining order may not, in fact, stop them from the action. But I think it's the gamble that if, in fact, they come near you again, and it doesn't, get super dangerous, then at least you can get them arrested. I don't.
But see, here's the thing.
It's still a gamble.
It is a gamble, because once this is what's going to happen. You get a person gets a restraining order. They sign it. The police officer on his shift somehow in his car goes to the house and say, "Are you Donald Duck? Here's a restraining order." And they hand it, "Are you Donald Duck?" "Yes, I'm Donald Duck. Here's a restraining order." They read it. It's from Mickey Mouse. And he's like, "Oh, hell no," right? So now they're angry, and the restraining order doesn't put a fence around you. So those type of people, and I was going to say men, because it's more often men, but those people are going to now up their game, whatever they want to do to be in your life.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm definitely going to be more upset there. I think it's going to be them being upset, and they could be embarrassed that, that now, someone else knows about it. That's essentially, I think at some point it'll be a public record. So, but I can't say don't get one.
Right.
Right. But I would say if you feel inclined to do so, definitely go ahead and take that first step. And then there are essentially additional steps you need to take. But if you feel like getting that restraining order is going to help ease your mind and then help you start on the path to getting fully away and distancing yourself, then absolutely do it.
Now, we can't speak to every situation, and there's tons of situations, and I don't believe in training for situations. I believe in training for your life and allow yourself to think through, right? But I remember seeing this movie where she couldn't go to the police because he was a police officer. So these people who have authority and these other women or people who feel like they don't have any place to move because these people control everything. Now, we like to say, right, you need to say something. But that's a tough corner.
Yeah, that is. It's that movie kind of resonates a little bit, but that is tough. But I know that, and I'll try to have some additional resources specifically to that. But I know that the domestic violence hotline, they have different scenarios that they kind of help talk you through.
Okay.
And so that's definitely a great resource to kind of figure out so my situation is this. And so this is really, I mean, it's not like a blanket
right.
answer, you know. So what works for you may not work for me, type of thing. But I will, on our next meeting, and I'll also share, I have a list of kind of resources that we could share with everyone as well. So I want to make sure that I have that handy. But specifically for that, what is the alternative for the police department? I know locally, the Baltimore Police Department, they have a separate domestic violence task force, and that's probably not the proper name for it, but they do have a separate department that specifically, and it's kind of devoted to that. So they have not only on the dispatchers know how to, basically talk to someone that may be in danger and trying to make sure they get the proper information without putting that person in harm's way. But then it's also a onus that's put on the responding officer that they have to follow up and they have to make sure that things are signed off. And that, I think, once the file comes in as a domestic violence case, then it goes to second or third party. So the dispatcher is already flagging it as a domestic violence case. The responding officer essentially is coming in and feeding information into that file. And then it's a third person that is looking and making sure each one is kind of addressed. So it was great to kind of know that, specifically in Baltimore City, because I was able to talk to a couple people there, that that's something that they have in place. And it's a little newer, I think, within the last couple of years, but that's good at least to know that, specifically for the example you were providing, at least it may not be just that one person that, could essentially just wipe this entire case off. So, but I'll make sure I have those resources on hand that we can share with our guests or with our audience for the next time.
So we know kids are home. We know kids are being abused. We know that the abuse is up. We know that the pandemic has done so much unraveling of people, human dignity, human. It's we think it's just a virus has killed. Was it 200,000 United States, a million plus global, but it's doing so much more.
Yeah,
it's doing.
Yeah, this pandemic is psychologically having a wear and tear on many people. I mean, healthy or not,
right? Right.
And then specifically for domestic violence victims, and they could have just entered those type of situations recently during the pandemic because we're at home all the time, and in any healthy relationship, you don't necessarily want to be around each other 24 hours a day. And I definitely have heard that the numbers of domestic violence cases reported has definitely skyrocketed.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just high; it's blown through the roof.
Right. That's why I couldn't say it has risen. No, it's skyrocketed.
Right.
And it's something. So, it's something that is one of the reasons why I'm always eager to share and talk and discuss, because need to figure out a way to get people out, get us out of those situations and figure out what is the best way to. So one of our conversations, and it could have been our last one, but you were saying, like, how can you put me out of business? Right. And I would love to not have to talk about all the people that are being abused, because really we have a lot of other stresses in our lives that we just should be able to deal with. And the happiness part is what is most important to me. We deserve to be happy, and to live life, as God intended it for us to do. And October is Domestic Violence Month. It's also kind of foreshadowed or kind of covered with breast cancer
because of cancer awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. But not only during October, but throughout the year, we should always take opportunities to offer people help and offer them the opportunity to talk and discuss. And we've mentioned it before, but therapy is such an important part of our livelihoods, of our just wellness.
I'm going to go on record to say, get a therapist.
Yes,
if really, I mean, if you don't, how about this? Let the therapist say, you know what? You don't need me.
Yes.
You know,
I go to therapy, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm happy I go to therapy every Thursday at 3:00. As many Thursdays as I can, but definitely every Thursday. It's on the books for every Thursday at 3:00, and it's not because I'm just emotionally distraught. I can't get up and live my life. I'm on the verge of ending it all. Like, no, it's just because I just also need to talk.
Right.
I also need to share, and I need some additional perspective.
Yes.
I like the fact that my therapist, she is a Black woman, and so there are different things that I don't necessarily have to explain.
Mm-hmm.
But she's able to help me understand. And oftentimes there are things that we don't really realize or recognize. This is the way we're addressing or confronting certain situations until we say it aloud. There's been plenty of times where she'll ask me, so why did you do that? And I'm like, okay, so I did this because...
there it is. Yeah.
Okay. And that's it,
Yeah.
And it's in those moments. And there are things that I'm not necessarily talking to my best friend about, not because I don't trust her, but because I don't know, the conversation didn't come up. And she's not trained for that. I don't deserve to take on my stuff too.
Well, here's the thing about the friend, and you can talk with me about anything, but if I'm on your side, I'm just going to rubber stamp things that you think anyway.
I think it's definitely easy for friends to do that. I have some great friends that will be like, Tamera, I mean, I just don't think that was right, but I know there's a number of times where I go and I'm like, I effed that all the way up, I shouldn't have did that. And they're not necessarily going to say it, but see, that's the point,
right.
To our point, like, that's why we need the therapist. So therapy is here for us all, regardless of where we are emotionally or physically. There are a number of therapists that have offered their services for free, specifically during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to make a note to make sure that if I can find some, I'll be sure to share their information as well. So I have kind of my 2 points that I'll make sure I'm sharing on our next talk.
Well, Tamera, we're about ready to close off our first show of Voices to be Heard. I just think this is going to be we're going to be here every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have to put that because we're all over, with the streaming and the world. So Eastern Standard Time, 7:30 here on this show. You can always re-hear it on the Apple Podcast, on iHeartTunes, under Dr. Paul Dyer Bridges Live. And if you have any questions, just please email us and call us and leave a message, and we'll bring it up next Wednesday. There's so much more to talk about. There's so much more to unpack. And the sad issue is that we can never run out of things to say, right?
Right.
That is the sad issue. Anything you want to say before we check out?
I just want to thank you for giving this conversation a platform it needs and deserves. I also just want to encourage everyone that we can get through this together, no matter, I think I mentioned it before, no matter how long it's been for you. It's okay for you to get out of the situation or to just talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who are ready, willing, and able to talk about it. And I love you all. I know I don't know most of you, but those that are watching me, please know I promise I'm going to say a prayer for you all.
And we're going to say a prayer right now. So please, everyone, bow your heads. And thank you, Heavenly Father, for our voices to be heard and allow other voices to be heard. We want to reach out and touch you in our strength and our power and our prayers and our love, our true love from our heart and our spiritual bless. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I will talk to you later, dear. And you have a good night. Be safe. And everyone, be safe, be happy, and be loved.